back. Season 2. Foxfire Farmhouse. After a little break, we are now back in the farmhouse, settling in, dusting the cobwebs out of the corners.
Well, there's cows.
Got cows out there.
Yeah, cows.
Man.
Cows and weird creatures that we don't know.
Yeah, there's all sorts of creatures outside the farmhouse.
Scary creatures.
Yep, we need a guide. We need an Indiana Jones to come guide us through the scary underworld that is the Foxfire Farm.
Yeah. Luckily, there's
Deadly
no
out
snakes.
Yep. Not in this part of the woods.
Nope.
Only dragons.
Just dragons, flying snakes.
Flying snakes.
Honestly, are more scary than regular snakes.
I'd rather have a regular snake that just is like rolling around on its belly. That will do
It'd
with
be
that.
so scary to have flying snakes, like venomous snakes that
That'd
fly
be terrible.
around. I'm so thankful for the fact that Satan was cursed.
Can you imagine?
I hope
all
that
of the snakes just like running around, big legs, and
flying,
flapping and flying. That'd be, it'd be epic. It'd be something to
kill.
It'd be a cool way to die. I guess.
No, he was eaten by a dragon.
Right.
I'm sad, but that's cool.
Well, that's that's a good way to go for old Elijah.
Very manly death.
Yep. Wish we could have heard more of his podcasts, but he got cut short by a dragon. Not a bad way to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Well, we're here. We're here again. It's been a little while, but we are the Foxfire Farmhouse, the podcast, and we talk about all things storytelling and digital media. We love the combination of the modern technology of digital media with the ancient practice of telling stories, and we think that there's a lot that can be done and should be done with digital media and storytelling. So we want to
and shouldn't
highlight,
be done.
We'll talk about what shouldn't be done too. But we want to highlight the things that are good, true, and beautiful in the world of storytelling with digital media. That's what we're here for today. And so before we get on into the topic of the day, we are going to jump right into movie news. Movie news is a new segment for the Foxfire Farmhouse. We have not done a whole lot of movie news. Obviously, news about movies has come up as we talk about various movies and topics and things like that. But we have not had a segment. So this segment is going to be dedicated in this show going forward to random movie news that's coming up that we think is worth commenting on or thinking about or evaluating. Well, this isn't the place you're probably going to want to come to get your movie news because we're not going to be keeping you up to date with all the hottest new stuff.
We'll tell you the obvious things.
Really just the stuff that we feel like we have some kind of comment to make on or that we're interested in or that we think is going to make ripples or whatever we please, we'll throw in here.
Agreed.
And this is a good example because today we're actually not going to give movie news.
Nope. No movie news.
Elijah has news, folks.
I have news.
He has news. What's the news?
I have a new daughter.
Ooh, he has a new daughter.
Yep. She's beautiful. She's a beautiful little baby.
What's her
girl.
name?
Felicity.
Felicity?
Heyman. I'm not going to give the middle name.
No middle name.
For security purposes.
Beautiful.
But it's beautiful.
It is. Felicity
it's a beautiful
is a
middle name. Yeah.
I love that name.
I love
Felicity.
it. It wasn't a name that we thought about since we were children, but just came to us and we're like, that is such a cool name.
Yeah. Who did you come up with that, or who was that?
I think Abby came up with it, and then we're like, oh my gosh,
she's got such a nice ring.
Yeah, such a ladylike name.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. American Girl
Little
doll.
Felicity. She's doing well.
She's doing well.
Enjoying life.
Oh yeah.
Enjoying the short time she's had in the world, breathing oxygen.
Yeah, she is.
It's wonderful.
She's looking around. She's crying a little bit louder than she used to. So at first we're like, oh, it's so quiet. So because our other kids are. They have some volume, and then sure enough, 4 weeks in, we're like, she got the volume of the Heyman clan. So yeah,
maybe she's got the chops to be an actor. Maybe that's why this is movie news, is because
Felicity look out Hollywood.
She's gonna be the new thing in town.
If Hollywood's still around.
Yeah, I doubt Hollywood's still gonna be around. In other news, for the movie news, Hollywood's dying.
Sinking.
It's this. Oh, it's like the sinking city. Cut to things that are cool.
Cool things.
So we usually on the show recommend things that we have found that are cool, that are enjoyable, and that is what we are going to do today. Mine is a novel I read just last week called The Sinking City by Christine Cohen. Christine Cohen also wrote The Winter King, which is just brilliant too, and for its own reasons, and maybe sometime we'll talk about that later on the show. But The Sinking City is a story set in Venice, and
historical fantasy Venice.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. Historical fantasy Venice. There are magicians, a magician's guild that is
cool.
propping up the city with their magic.
I love.
There's
guilds.
also this race of people called the Seleni who come up from the ocean, who are like water people who live under the water. And they come up, and the magicians broker a deal between the tradesmen and the Seleni so that they can trade the underwater pearls for goods from the land. And that's the whole setting. And there's this little girl who turns out she's been promised to the Seleni as their bride, as the one who's going to meld the two worlds together. And she runs away from all that and pretends to be a boy and has to try to navigate life in Venice. She can't leave Venice, so she can't get away from this problem. She's trying to figure out how to actually run away from this problem. And that's the whole start of the story. And it's just a wonderful fantasy romping adventure story through the streets of Venice with magicians and duels, duels, and it's a lot of fun. So go check it out. Christine Cohen, the Sinking City.
How did they handle the whole lady dressing up as a boy in that book? Because I remember hearing something about that they did a good job handling that.
Yeah.
Do you think they did?
I really do.
Yeah.
So she has to hide because they're looking. The Seleni now are looking for a little girl.
Yeah.
Then I say a little girl. She's like 17. Because they're looking for this girl that was she's turned 16, I believe, in the book. And at her 16th birthday is when they come to take her because she had been promised to them before she was even born. And so they're after her. And all of that's not too much of a giveaway. All that happens in the first couple chapters. Yeah. So then she goes and has to leave. And the only way she can actually get out of this is if she's dead. So she fakes her suicide and has to disguise herself and turns into a boy. And so she's struggling to like be a boy or, act like a boy, but then she's around all these other magician's assistants who are her age. And so then there's like the interplay of just like romance tied up in the middle of trying to be a boy, but also falling for these boys. And like, so just really, really fun, like complex. And then because it's carnival season, she has these moments where she sneaks out to dress up as a carnival goer as a girl, so she's able to go out into the carnival as a girl and then come back and go back to the magicians. So it's a really fun story. Good times. And it's very high paced action. It's not so the Winter King, her first novel was much more of like a heady mythical tale and was just really powerful. I mean, it really moved me. But this one's way more of an adventure fantasy story and was just a lot of fun and in a solid story. So
that's awesome.
That's my thing. What about you? What's been cool for you?
Is an oldie but a goodie to a lot of people. But it is Skyrim, Elder Scrolls 5. Such a good game. It is just turned 10 years old, and I'm playing through it again, as a lot of people do. Except I've made it past being a prisoner and making your character in the first couple hours that it takes to get into like free roaming for successfully. So I've been playing for a little while and just enjoying it, running around. I mean, for those who don't know, it's a fantasy role play game. It's open world. It's one of the first ones to do it well and do it right, and it just lets you kind of become a character. You can go be a wizard if you want. You can be a thief. You can be a knight. You can cross train and whatever you want. So like if you're like, I've been a knight forever, I would just want to be a wizard now. You can go join the College of Wizards and become a great archmage.
Oh, wow.
And you've slain dragons. Dragons have just came back. So there's like elves and orcs and ancient dwarvish people that have disappeared. So you can go through their minds with like all sorts of constructions in there. And it takes place in like a Viking setting. So you can become like a thane of a town and build your house. It's just really well fleshed out. There's so many different little stories in it. And it's just enjoyable. It's one of those fun ones that you can just throw on a podcast or whatever music you want to listen to and just run around and just run into, like, you can't go for like a couple minutes without running into somebody that goes, hey, there's something going on over here. I need your help. And so you like run over there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's like a bunch of werewolves living in the mountains that I have to go kill now.
Okay, wow.
Or befriend and become a werewolf. Like it provides a lot of cool options. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check it out because I really enjoy that kind of thing.
You need to.
I enjoy it in different ways. I have those moments where I have the time to just like hang out, But then there are other times I want a game that I can be like in and out of in like 6 or 7 hours, and I can just play through a story and be done.
It rewards with more time.
Yeah,
for sure. It's not a quick.
But it's the kind of thing with the types of games that you can come back to with more time. It's the kind of thing that allows you to come back to it again and again. Later. So
it's not too complex, so you're not gonna like forget how to play it too.
Okay,
so like if you go on a break for however long and you come back to it, you're not gonna forget.
Yeah,
how
that's
it
cool.
plays. It's pretty simple.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Cool.
Now for the subject of the week.
And now our feature presentation.
So today we are going to dive into a couple of essays by C.S. Lewis. And I really just want to I'm going to rehearse the ideas of the essays, and then we're just going to run off of those ideas into the world of movies and storytelling, because I think there are some really fruitful ideas that can shine some light on how we can understand the power of stories and kind of get below the hood of what storytelling does to us. Because in one of our first episodes, we talked about why films matter.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we said movies matter are because stories matter. And we said that stories shape our moral imagination. They shape how we see the world and impact us. And so I think what Lewis does with these essays in particular is he kind of pulls back the curtain on what exactly is going on when a story forms our moral imagination. What is it? What is it? Why does a story form our moral imagination?
Yeah.
So essay number 1 is called Meditations on a Tool Shed. And he starts the essay saying that I was in a tool shed, and he looks at this beam of light that is coming through a small iris in the wall, some kind of window. And there's this beam of light shining in it. And through the beam of light, I can see it shining on some tools. I can see the dust motes floating through this beam of light, but everything else is so dark that all I can see is this one thing. And that's what I give my attention and focus to, and I can see it, and it has its own properties, and I can think about it and understand it. He says, but then when I step into the light, that then once I'm in the beam, I can see out the window now, and I can see the sun, millions of miles away. I can see trees, and I can see birds flying through the sky and clouds passing by. And I can feel the warmth on my face and experience the light of that sunbeam. And so he talks about how there's 2 ways of knowing something. There is that looking at the thing and the looking through. And that you can look at something as a scientist, like observing it and trying to break down what's going on chemically. So you look at a young man and a young woman who are falling in love. And the scientist can look at this thing and describe it as, well, this organ of his body is giving off this amount of testosterone, and this dopamine is hitting his brain, and this these chemical reactions are happening in the girl, and that's why they are finding each other attractive. But if you talk to a boy or anyone who's fallen in love with someone and you ask them to describe it, then what is going on in their mind and what is going on in the experience of it is something far different than the chemical reaction that is happening. They experience it very differently, and their description of it would be very different. And you can describe it from the outside and say, here's what's happening. But once you're on the inside, it's like, no, that's like so much more is happening than that in this moment. And so take that idea then. And then he's got another essay that he brings, he kind of takes that concept and applies it and thinks through it in terms of story. And this essay is called Myth Made Fact. And in it, he says how there are people who think that Christianity is really just kind of a holdout of ancient times, that we are holding on to the mythic things of Christianity.
Nobody believes what they believe.
No one believes that it's true.
It's different today than it was like back then.
No one believes that any of that stuff really happened. We're just hanging on to like these mythical elements of it. That's just kind of like, the trappings of it, the reality of it. Like, did this stuff happen? Did that, really take place? That kind of thing no one believes. They're just holding on to the trappings and the names and the rituals. And, it's kind of a quaint.
It's like a blanket.
It's just they're hanging on to it. It's not, they don't really use it. And Lewis just says that he makes the case that myth is actually the truest thing of religion. So then he takes this idea of the looking at something and looking along. And he says, when we experience something in reality, like pain or pleasure, there is the experience of the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then there is our mental apprehension of the thing. So I can think about pain, for instance, or I could think about sexual pleasure. I could think about the taste of food, and I could analyze it and think about it. But when I am experiencing pain or when I am experiencing pleasure, then I am not trying to understand it intellectually.
No.
And so he used the example, like if you've broken your foot, or if you have extreme pain, then in that moment you're not knowing pain in terms of an intellectual apprehension of the thing.
Yeah.
You are knowing it from the experience.
I wish that my toe were not broken so that way I could write another page on pain.
Yeah,
like,
right. Exactly.
What
he says there's this odd bifurcation that we can never
can't do at the same time.
Yeah. And can you say that someone who has looked at something at a distance knows it?
Mm-hmm.
No. But can you say the person experiencing the pain is in a position to talk about it in that knowing way of the mental apprehension? And even when people are in pain and they are able to like analyze what's going on, we refer to that as like an out of body experience. Like there's extreme trauma. They've had some kind of massive damage to their body, and they look at it's like they're an outside observer just looking at another person's body. It's like a disassociation that's happening between your body and your mind in a way that allows you to not be overcome by the pain. But we talk about it as a split, not as like the two things happening at once. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what he takes that idea then and says that one of the powers of storytelling is that it's the place where you get both the closest together.
Yeah.
So it's a place in myth, in big story structure, where you get the knowing of the thing and the experiencing of the thing. And he says that like myth is more true than truth in a sense that like there are things that are true that you can speak that are true about reality. But then the myth is actually the reality of which we speak. And so when you experience a story, for instance, when you're watching a really good movie, or when you're reading a really good book like The Sinking City, or you're enjoying some kind of story being told to you from someone who's a really good storyteller, then you are experiencing that story. And that story is describing a reality. And so it is not, that story is not a principle or a like theory. It is a concrete expression of a principle and of a theory.
Yeah.
In a way that like I can take a story and pull many principles out of it because it's a real thing. If it's done well, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. If it's a true story, then you can pull things out of it. And so he just like, I find that a really helpful way of thinking through like what happens is why our moral imagination is shaped is because we've come up to a reality, even if it's a fictional reality, we've been with a reality and kind of cemented the principle in our minds too. When we talk about courage, one could give a dictionary definition of courage and think that that's knowing. Yeah. But it would be way better to explain like a scene from Gladiator or something like that to describe courage.
Make you feel what courage is and what it does to the surrounding people and all of those ideas. Like watching Saving Private Ryan or something like that, and you see somebody grit up and be afraid, but like grit it and go through like a Hacksaw Ridge or something like that. He's praying to the Lord and he's going through something hard, and you're just like, oh, I feel it. Like I feel the grit in what he's doing. Like it's that feeling aspect, and that's what a lot of people have a hard time with.
Yeah,
deciphering that.
I love what Lewis does. I love Lewis for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
but I love how he takes what are those mundane instincts that we have, and kind of is able to get behind them and validate them. Yeah, because I think that I know that stories have had an impact on me. Yeah, right. But being able to understand why or how. It's
hard because like we've swam in the water of the Enlightenment for so long that it's really hard for us to like to appreciate those things and to validate those things that are a part of our human nature, and the fact that we need to experience things, and that we also like they both need to happen, that like both are valid and need to be done in terms of analysis and experiencing things, because you can go crazy on either end. But I think that we, in the culture that we swim, we're much more prone to doing the analyzing and not the feeling. Yeah, like we're more prone to like it's more comfortable for us to go into a movie with a notebook than it is to actually experience a film, and to experience what that does and how that affects you, and to come at it afterwards. I think he talked about an instance of a story. I think he talked about the Till We Have Faces, brought up Psyche, and he wrote a book on that with Till You Have Faces, and he brought up the fact that like the points that he had out of it were not points that he had like looking at it. It was points that he had experienced in reading it. He felt something when he read it, and that translated to the book that he wrote.
Yeah,
and
right.
and same thing with the author that wrote The Sinking City, is she said that when she read Till We Have Faces and the way it made her feel, she wanted to create that experience, that feeling in The Winter King for her readers.
Yeah.
And so it's that truth of like, oh, this made me feel strong or courageous or afraid or have a feeling of dread, and those create impacts in our lives and cause us to do certain things based off of that. Like we talk about the fact that this is like our moral imagination, and the fact that like how we respond to like a horribly violent situation is a lot of times informed by like what we watch and what we read.
Yeah. And even I think that that often a movie can give us the opportunity, or a story can give us the opportunity to run into situations that we would never encounter or on our own, or maybe even if we would encounter similar, or we would see courage, for instance, in a family member, or courage from a friend at church who's going through a hard time, and we see them demonstrate courage. Yeah, that's one thing. But to be able to watch it in multiple stories and see courage played out is a benefit, because it continues to cement that idea of what courage looks like into our mind, as opposed to like we have the one instance that we can kind of,
I think that's why like certain storytellers that are like, it's their first time telling, like they're telling their story. It a lot of times that falls flat comparative to even somebody who has lived not as storied of a life, but still lives a normal life, but has read so many stories and is well read and well experienced in the feeling of story and how that has affected their life. Like some of the best writers were like hit with illness and forced just to read books, and they didn't live a storied life, and yet they've produced works that have affected people who do go on to go live storied lives, and those who continue on in the tradition of storytelling.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's just always, stories have shaped my life so much. Like I mean, literally like two of the key moments of my life were impacted specifically by stories. One of them by a novel, but it wasn't a novel. It was a biography, kind of an autobiography story of a person's life, and that impacted me and changed the course of my life tangibly for a long time. And so I just think that there is something that like that kind of power that stories have should be analyzed, because I think that's where the analysis is needed for us, is that we have so much coming at us that we need to stop and think about the movie, right? And say, okay, how is this actually affecting us? And what is the story actually saying? Because it might have things about it that appeals to us, but then when we step back and, step out of the light and look at the light, step out of the light of the projector and look at the light,
poor lighting.
Then we're like, wait a second, hang on, what is this actually saying? This is saying something that's horrible about the world. It's saying something very untrue, and I am buying it, and I really should be more careful about what I'm watching. So that's important. But I think on the same side, Christians can have that scientific, the modernist scientific approach towards a story that just says, okay, if it's unexplainable, then we discount it. And if I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. If it's unexplainable, if it's having an impact on me, and I'm afraid of what that impact is, and I don't know what that impact is, then I'm scared of it, and so I'm just going to stay away from them.
Yeah. So a lot of people are afraid to read certain books that are like not couth in our culture. Like people are afraid to read like the Communist Manifesto. They're afraid to read like other stories because of the effect that it'll have on their lives, or even just what's popular today. They're afraid of ingesting that because they see the direction that it's taken a lot of other people. And so when they get in these arguments about these subjects, about these stories, they're speaking as one who's never experienced it, and so
Right.
that creates
exactly. Right.
And obviously, you don't need to experience everything. There's things that we don't need to experience, and that you still can speak to. Like there's that aspect, but
Yeah.
I think on the whole, there's a lot of areas in which Christians can experience things and have something to say in experiencing them, and to
Right.
be able to come at it with the Christian worldview afterwards and during and through, and to be able to see that through the lens
Yeah.
of truth.
I mean, a good example of this is I have friends and family who don't like the Harry Potter books and would really strongly say that no, we're not going to watch that. We have not a conviction against it, but just they choose not to watch it because they think it's
a conviction. But yeah.
they think it's bad, it's wicked, and it's going to lead them in the wrong directions.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many people who talk like that about those films and books, but who have never read them.
Mhm.
And there is a fear that like the touch of the thing is what's going to corrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think though it does, like you're saying, it makes it where we are making analysis of the knowing without ever stepping into it and understanding what is it that people love about these things? What is this thing?
Yeah.
And once you step into it, I think that and then I think there's also that fear because you've already prejudged that it's bad, that when you step into it, that somehow you're taken over by it's a magic,
Yeah.
pun intended, in the case of the Harry Potter, that somehow you are under its spell and now you've been deceived and you're, let's see how far we can go with this, but that you have been deceived somehow in a way that now, well, if I like it, then it's probably because it's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I just think that's an unhelpful approach for Christians to have toward the world, and I don't mean
it's like a
directly the world
Hunchback
system,
of
but
Notre Dame hellfire perspective of things. Like, have you seen the Hunchback?
Yeah.
Where it's just like that idea of like he wasn't able to have this thing for a long time, even though it's a different situation. It's just that idea of like pushing off from just a desire that he wasn't able to have as a clergyman or whatever. And then it becomes something horrible, and it just mutates itself into this weird twisted thing. And it creates a weakness. I think it can create a weakness in a person when they're just so afraid of something. Yeah, like fear is not a response that we're to have as Christians. We're to have the response of courage in the face of fear.
That's true.
Other people would be afraid of something and have a thoughtful response to that instead of just being, oh, that's scary. And that
doesn't mean that everyone has to go out and imbibe all this stuff that they don't like or don't think would be good. It just means that we have to be careful about the kind of analysis we give when we haven't experienced the thing itself. Yeah. So we can give, like you're saying, there are analysis we can give from the outside about things that we haven't directly experienced, but that even that has to be tempered with the type of humility that says, I'm willing to listen, to a perspective that has come from inside it.
Yeah, we need to have a backbone, but I think it doesn't need to be that like you're immediately like stabbing everything that's coming at you. You're just like, you look evil, instead of like okay, what are you saying? Right. Okay, you're an orc. Not everything evil like looks like an orc. Like when you start making things look like an orc that aren't an orc, like you start making everything look like an orc. It's more varied than that.
But and that's why we have to go back and forth, like Lewis says, between the looking at and looking through, and the experiencing the thing, the knowledge of experience, and the knowledge of analysis. And that back and forth move is what has to happen in the analysis of movies. So go experience the movie on it. How let the movie take you for a ride, and then step back and say, okay, what ride was I just taken on? Or give that kind of analysis, and that's going to be the fruitful way of handling any kind of storytelling. Yeah, and kind of coming into it and getting back out of it. So yeah. Well, that's Lewis, and we have not tapped the depths of Lewis by any means.
Oh goodness, nobody has. It's pretty.
So if you want to read those essays, though, you can find both of those online, pretty accessible. There's a YouTube channel that I think is called C.S. Lewis Doodles, and they do chalkboard type illustrations along with his essays and read them. And so that's a great resource if you want to go watch some of those essays.
Yeah, I found them free on Google. The Myth Became Fact was one of the ones I found like immediately.
I believe Myth Became Fact is a part of the God in the Dock collection, so you can find it there. Yes, and Lewis has all sorts of great things on storytelling, and we're probably going to come back to him multiple times.
Him and
again
Tolkien.
And again here on the show. Yeah, because we We're fanboys of those guys, and I really want to be a part of that imaginative legacy with my life. I want my life to contribute to that, to highlight the good and the true and the beautiful in storytelling that's happening now. And if God allows me, do my best to contribute to that storytelling legacy.
Agreed.
Through our own stories and through the training of people to appreciate stories and write stories. And, hopefully we'll see many more. Yeah. I'd love to see more Lewis's and Tolkien's in our own generation, although, that sometimes feels like a wistful and hopeless hope. So, but we've got to be, we can't complain about where we are and what story we were given. We have to pick up from where we were left off and where God put us and try to do the best with what we've got. And so that's what this podcast is. Yeah. That's what all of our story endeavors are. And so we're just going to keep watching movies, keep analyzing and talking about them, and thinking about storytelling and digital media here on the show.
Indeed. I'm excited.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future episodes, if you have movies you'd like us to talk about, if you would have questions that you want us to answer, things like that, we are just going to talk about all things digital storytelling. Check out season 1. We've already talked about a lot of things in the previous 10 episodes. We've got some more exciting things planned already for this coming year.
Super exciting. It's
going to be fun. Next week's episode is going to be a blast. We'll give you a sneak peek. We're going to cast a Bible story. So we're going to take a story from the Bible, and Elijah and I are going to pick our top picks for casting the story and directing the story, and then we're gonna run with it and see where it goes, see what we decide. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Yeah. So stick around. If you have any of those comments or questions, you can send those to podcast@foxfirefarmhouse.com. Also, if you want to see some of our movie recommendations and learn more about the show, and find details about where you can find the show, it's foxfirefarmhouse.com. So yeah, check us out there, comment, like, and we'll be back with you next week for the casting of a Bible story.